Hey, Frank Thomas here. Welcome to the next part of the series of designing websites with the .NET MVC model. We're going to be getting into some cool stuff. We're going to be looking into the basic install, and we're going to light up a database in it and a few other things. So make sure you stay tuned. Hey, Frank Thomas here. I'm glad to be with you here again. We're going to get into part number 2. We're going to be basically looking at the base blank install. If you had missed the first video, go back to the first one. I show you how I set that up. It's very simple. But if you remember, let's just take a look here. We have our blank install. The only thing we've done is we put in entity framework. We haven't got any kind of database in here. Like there's nothing. Like there's nothing there. It's just basic. And we have to. So in this video, what we're going to have to do is a few things. We have to set up the database. Easy to do. Don't worry. We have to create a connection string. Again, easy to do. I'll show you how it's done. We have to put in the basic configuration files for entity. And what we do is we enable migrations, and boom, we will actually set that up. We'll see the database, and we'll actually create a simple object. Then we'll migrate that as well. All very simple, so hold on to your hats here. Okay, so getting started here, I'm going to be doing a few things here. So we have entity installed, which is what we want. I'm just going to look at my show notes here so I don't screw up. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, very first of all, I'm going to create a connection string. So I need to do that in the web.config. Now, the connection string, its whole purpose for living is to actually allow you to connect to a database. So the basics for entity, as you can see, have been slotted into here. And right underneath here, we're going to put our connection string. So I'm going to put an enter sign in here. I was doing some testing, so I do have a line that's commented out, which I'm going to remove. Okay. So we're going to call our connection string DbContext, okay? Database context. In entity, it's called a context, okay? That's why I've called it that. And we're going to create a database called Db.mdf, okay? Let's do that next. Inside of the app data, now you can put it anywhere you want to, but this is where I normally put it. I'll click add, and I'm going to add a new item. And because this folder really is for data, so I'm going to create a new thing here. And it needs to be called DB. Okay, so we have a database in there. If I go over to server thing here, I'm going to just refresh here. Now it's seeing the context, which is fine. You see here, if you look in the tables, there's nothing there. It's just, it's a blank slate right now, okay? So there we have that. So we have those two pieces. The next thing we are going to want to do is we're going to want to set up a pointer for entity to tell it where the database is. So again, you can do this anywhere you want to. I'm going to do it underneath of models. And I'm going to create a new item here, just a class file. And I'm going to say call it anything you want to. Doesn't matter. Now, what I'm going to do here, and this is how entity knows. So I'm going to put into here DbContext. Okay, I hit Control period. Okay, we're going to be using System.Data.Entry, whatever it is. And inside of here, I'm going to create a constructor. Now the whole, actually not right here. So right on the end of this. Yeah, I do need to create a constructor. My apologies. The constructor is something that's ran right away. By default, out of the box, if I called my connection string over here in web config, default, I wouldn't have to do this. But I really do like to name things. So a little bit of a control freak. CTOR tab creates a constructor, and in here I'm going to put a space, base, and I'm going to put the name of the connection string in. So I'm going to put in DbContext. Okay. Okay, so there we go. We have those two pieces in there. I'm just making sure I have not forgotten anything else here. I believe we have all the basics. If our package manager window is not open, like so let's say it's not docked, you can click here and type in enable migrations. I forgot the S in the last video. So let's just click that. And let's see if it gets upset with us at all. Okay, great. So it's targeted, and you can see that we're ready to do migrations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an initial migration, just a blank slate migration. So I'm going to say add migration. Initial install. And I really recommend you describe the name of the migration, use as many letters as you need to, so you know what the migration does. You'll see here a folder called migrations has been set up for us. Okay, so because we're not putting anything in the database yet, our migration is going to be empty, and that's what I expect. And the last step here is I'm going to say update database. And as you can suspect, nothing's going to happen, but it's going to fulfill the migration. So that migration's in there. If we ever want to come back to that migration, we can see here initial install. Okay, this is just initial install. Don't have to worry about that. That's great. Okay, so let's say we've got all that in there, which is fantastic. That's what we want. Now, let's say we want to build a customer table in there. Okay. Let me just pull that up. I've got the code here just to quickly do things here. Actually, I'll type it for you guys. Inside the models here, I like to create two different folders. And again, really, you can do this any way you want to. I'm going to call one database view or database model. Or sorry, model. Yeah, database model. DB model. Okay, and I'm going to create another one called the view model. Or yeah, view model. Now, what's the difference? The big difference here is the database model is we're looking directly at the database table as it lives and breathes and everything else. A view model, on the other hand, could contain extra data. Let's say we're storing a table with country names, and we want to reference that. We can add that in as an entry and make that a view. So when we view a page, that's the model we're going to use to present data to the page, to present things in that page. So that's really the big difference here. Okay, so back to the screen here. So in the side of the database model, I'm going to create a customer. I'm going to create a new item, and we're going to create a class. I'm going to call it customer. Okay, so inside of here, I'm just going to create a bunch of properties. PROP is the short form for property, double tab. Okay, int ID. Now, it's really important when we're setting up keys. Entity recognizes the int ID as a key value, and it'll make it a unique key value automatically for us. I can hit enter, enter. So that's why we don't have to put in key or anything. Like, we don't have to do anything fancy here. And I'm going to say string first name, prop string last name, prop string. I'm going to do this really simple, nothing complicated, but this does illustrate a few things, which is great. Okay, now I'm going to add a few attributes to some of these because by default, if you know C#, okay, an int cannot be null unless I put in a question mark in front. Now it's nullable. Null means it can be no value. But for this one here, so again, because entity sees this as an ID, it's going to set this up as a key. It's going to not be nullable. It has to be there. It's going to be auto-generated by the system. Ignacia. It just works. But for the first name, strings can be nullable. I don't want that. So I'm going to use a field qualifier called required. I'm going to hit Control-Tab, and I need to use component model data annotations. Okay? And let's say I also want the last name to be required. Oops. There we go. So we've set up our model. I'm going to save that. I'm going to jump over to the DbContext here. Now inside of here, what we need to do is we need to create a reference to that table that we want to build. Okay? And the way we do that is we do another property here, and we're going to call this dbSet. Okay? And we're going to put triangle brackets around it, and we're going to call this customer. Now it doesn't know what it is, so I'm going to hit Control-Tab dot, because this is representing an object or a value somewhere. And of course it's sitting inside of my DB model, which it is over here. I'll hit Enter. And I can call this table anything I want, but out of convention I'm going to call it customers, because it makes sense to call it that. Okay, so there we go. We've got that in there. So now what we've done, just as a return here, created a customer. We've had a few fields that are required, and we've created, and we've told the configuration file, which is being referenced by DbContext, that we have this table that we want to create. Okay, so we save everything here. We go back to our package manager console. What we're going to do is we're going to create an add migration, create customer table. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. And if everything's good, we should come back with it saying 2 thumbs up. We get the yellow here is what we want. Now let's just take a look before I actually update the database. I'm going to refresh here. All we have in here is migration history. So the system has automatically created a table called migration history. If we right click here and we look at the data, what we're going to see is we're going to see our first migration in there. Okay, so there it is. You see that? I open this up a bit. Initial installation. Okay, fantastic. Now, what you'll see here, when I told it to create the migration, it's created a migration schema for us. Okay, it's created the code that we need through Entity to actually build this database. And you'll see my first name is nullable false. Last name nullable false. And as you can see, ID is recognized by Entity. It's going to make it nullable false, and identity is true. And that says this is going to be the key. You're going to auto-generate it, and you're going to auto-increment the whole 9 yards within the database. Okay? And the primary key is actually shown right here. There we go. Fantastic. Again, this is very basic, very, very basic. I could go in here and make changes if I want to. I'm not going to get into that here. That's a whole pickle jar in itself. So we'll leave it like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say update database. And as I alluded to in the very first video, the cool thing about doing this is if I light this up on a cloud server, and when I do the actual migration and I say enable code first, this all just happens automatically. I point it to the database where it is in the cloud as part of the actual publishing plan, and it will connect to the database server. It'll create the database. It'll do everything for us. Bob's our uncle. It's wonderful. Now, if I go back to Server Explorer here, and if I click on here and I refresh it, there we go. We got our customers. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning, guys. So we're now at 14 minutes, so I'm going to call this video a close for now. I hope you enjoyed it. It's really the whole purpose of this was to show you the basics of actually doing initial install on a blank MVC project using Entity. We didn't use Entity to create the database. We did it manually, which was easy, as you can see. We went in and we created the connection string and the initial default values for the dbconfig file, and then we turned around and enabled migrations, set that up. It was happy with everything. Final thing we did was we created an object called customers, and we told the DbContext about it, and it created it and moved it over as a table. So there you go. That's why I said in the first video, it's good to know database structure. You can really screw this up. I've seen guys really muddle this up, and it's just bad for everybody in the end. Anyhow, next video, we'll be getting deeper. We're going to be actually taking that customer, and we're going to actually create pages that let us do the CRUD, which is create, remove, create, retrieve, update, update, and I can't remember what CRUD stands for. It's basically all the database operations. So make sure you stay tuned for the next video. Thanks so much.